In this video, you're going to learn how to take an uploaded video, process the video, send it to OpenAI's Vision API, and then get a text summary back. This is one of those things where just because you can in PHP doesn't necessarily mean you should, but we're going to do it anyways. So let's go. Hi, I'm Nick. I make programming videos about various topics related to the web. I have a bonus tip at the end for saving money. Yes, this does cost a little bit of money, but I think you'll be surprised at how little you actually use while utilizing OpenAI's API. In order to help us visualize everything, I built a simple UI in React and Laravel. React nor Laravel are required in order to do what we're about to do. I chose this because it was easy to get up and going. If you're not familiar, Laravel is an MVC framework, and we are going to use the controller part or the C part to do the work that we'd like to do at the moment. We've got two functions. We've got an index and a summarize. The index was what we were just looking at on the UI, and we're going to be doing all of our work in the summarize function here. The first thing we're going to do is grab the file from the request. So we're going to grab that file and we're going to set it to a variable. So we're going to rename the file when we move it from the temporary file that comes from the request. And what we're going to say is we're going to grab the request, then we're going to grab the file. It's going to be a key of video. And then the thing that we're also going to do is grab the original client extension. So basically what's going to happen here is it's going to be uploaded file dot whatever the original file extension was. We're also going to create a variable that's equal to the path of where this file is going to be set, because we're going to be referring to these things multiple times. So we're going to move the file, the temporary file that is created when we upload it, we're going to move it to a more permanent spot. So we're just going to do request, file, video, then we're going to say move, and we need to specify the directory first and then the file name. So this is why we're creating those variables. Now you may be wondering, why didn't we just use this? Because move expects the folder first and then the file name. So that's why we did that. One important note is that OpenAI's Vision API does not allow us to actually send in a video. We actually have to send in multiple base64 encoded images. So in the docs, if we click on Vision, we'll see that this gives us really good outline as to what they're expecting. Their docs are pretty good, so definitely check them out if you get stuck or if you kind of unsure about something, because it's really helpful. OpenAI can allow us to send in multiple images. So this is the example that we're kind of using, basing our things off of in order to send up. So we can see that there's a role, there's content, and then there's multiple image URLs. And that's what we're going to be using today. We're going to take a video, process it, and do some things. Now, there are limitations, and you should definitely check those out in their docs, because you may or may not run into these while you're processing your videos or images. PHP doesn't have a standard library for manipulating videos. So that means we're going to have to reach out for something called FFmpeg. Now, FFmpeg is a command line tool for handling video, audio, and other multimedia files. Someone built this awesome package called PHP FFmpeg, and this allows us to interact with FFmpeg in an object-oriented way. So this is what we're going to be using for this video. It's super easy to get started. You have to install PHP FFmpeg using composer require, And you also have to make sure that you have FFmpeg binaries installed as well. And you'll have to check depending on your system. It should be pretty easy. For Mac OS, you should just have to do a brew install FFmpeg. If you're using Windows, I'm using WSL, and then you can just use sudo apt install FFmpeg, and that should just work. This is going to be the video that we are going to process, send to AI, and get a summary back. So let's watch this video. It's a short video, it's only 9 seconds. I wanted to use it as a demonstration without it being too long. Because we've established that we cannot actually send the entire video to OpenAI, we're going to just take the duration of the video and then chop it up and grab a frame every second. FFmpeg has something called FFprobe, and so we're going to use that to get the duration of the video, run a loop, and for every second, we're going to grab a frame. So we're going to say FFprobe was just going to be our variable name, and then the PHP package has something called FFprobe, and we're going to say create. So we're going to get the video duration. There's a format function, and this is going to take the uploaded file path. This is why we set it that variable in the beginning, just to make it a little easier and make it a little more clean for us. We're going to say get, and then we can specify the property that we want to retrieve. And in this case, it's going to be the duration. Let's create an array to hold our images. So we're just going to set this equal to a blank array. Now we're going to start utilizing FFmpeg. And in order to do that, we can use a class called FFmpeg. We're going to do a create. All right, so we need to open a video now. So we're just going to name this variable video, and then we're going to use the FFmpeg variable, and we're going to say open, and we're going to do the uploaded file path. So now we've opened the video in this class, which will then help us get the frame for every second. Let's do a simple for loop. So for I equals 0, we're going to start at the beginning of the file. And while I is less than or equal to the video duration, I plus plus. Okay, so on the video object, there is a function called frame. And this function expects the timecode, as we can see here. So we're going to use timecode, and we're going to say from seconds. And so we can just give it I. And so what this is saying is, on this video, at this particular frame, from these seconds, we can then save it. And we're going to save this into a path video frame.jpg. So this is pretty simple, not that bad. We're just taking the video, we're saying, hey, give me this particular frame, and then save it. So now for our images array, we're going to append something. We need to append that base64 image. So in PHP, we can do this by getting file get contents and base64 encoded. So that's as easy as base64 encode, file get contents, and then we're going to say base path video slash frame.jpg. So now that we're collecting all of our images, OpenAI expects the structure of the JSON that we're sending it, to be a specific way. So let's go ahead and start building that now. Just to refresh our memory, this is what we're supposed to be sending in total, something like this. Now this is in Python, but it should look something like this. This is the part we're going to be focusing on right now, just building up this array of objects, of image URLs. So you can either send an image URL or you can send in base64 encoded data. So we're going to use this structure and send it this way. Let's create a new variable to hold all of our base64 images in a specific structure. So images base64 equals a blank array, because again, we're just going to append stuff. So we're going to for each on our images up above that we already have. And let's append items to the base64. So we're going to say that it needs to equal a specific structure, and let's build out the structure. So the first thing that we need is a type, and this type is going to be an image URL. I know it sounds kind of funky, and it is kind of funky because we're sending base64 encoded data, not an actual URL, but that's just what their API expects. Next, we need to specify image URL as the actual key. And then within that, we need to say URL again. And similar to how you would do this on a front end, you have to specify that what you're giving it is actually base64 encoded. And we can do that by saying data image. We're just telling it again that this is base64 encoded. And now we need to give it the actual image. Now this is already base64 encoded, so we're all good there. We just have to build up the structure. Now that we have the array structure for the images built, the next thing we need to build is actually the entire structure that is going to be sent to OpenAI's API. And that's going to include the prompt that we're sending to get kind of specific results for summarizing a video. So let's define what that JSON data structure would look like. We're going to create a variable called JSON data. We're just going to make a big old array for this, and this is going to have specific keys. One of those specific keys is the model. Now, OpenAPI recently came through with a new model, and that is the version 4.0, and so that's the one we're going to be using today. There's different models available. I would recommend probably using the latest because these models continue to just get better and better. Next, we need to specify messages. And this is going to be an array. We need to say role and then user. And then we're going to give it our content. And this is also going to be an array. This is where we're going to specify the prompt to get what we want to get out of ChatGPT. So we're going to say type equals text, and then text equals our prompt. So we need to put our prompt here. Prompt engineering is a whole other topic unto itself, because this is where you start getting into perhaps paragraphs of text on what you want returned from ChatGPT. You can specify a specific output, say you wanted it in Markdown, or you only wanted a specific sentence, a specific tone, how long you wanted, etc. This is all part of prompt engineering. We're not going to get too deep into that. We are going to have a prompt, and it's going to be fairly short, but there are definitely quite a bit of videos on YouTube that you could watch to get kind of more info as to how to get exactly what you're looking for out of the video. I'm going to copy and paste a prompt that I have that I was using prior to this when I was doing my testing. All right, so this is the prompt that we're using. These are frames from a video that are uploaded. Generate a short, insightful summary of what is happening in the video. Take a deep breath and think step by step about how to best accomplish this goal. Do not mention anything about frames. Refer to it as a video. So in my testing, sometimes when I was messing around with it, it would say something about frames or mention something about frames. And if we want to get a summary of a video, let's say we were using this in our app and we were making an app to get summaries of videos, well, we wouldn't want the response to mention anything about frames. We would want it to talk about video, so that's why that specific part is put in there. All right, so now that we have our prompt in there, we need to put our images in there. That's the whole point of this video. So because we've built up that structure already, we can just say images base 64. Lastly, in the structure, we're going to say max tokens is 300. So now that we have the structure built up, we need to make the actual request. In Laravel, that's actually easy to do because they've built a whole HTTP client out to send with the bearer token and do all the things that we need to do. So I'm just going to utilize that. And we can say with token, because along with all these API requests, we need to send a bearer token. So I already have that set up as an environment variable. So I'm going to say services. And then we need to do a post. And then we need to hit a specific URL with data. So the specific endpoint that we're supposed to hit is the chat completions. So I'm just going to paste that in there. And then we need our data. So we've already built that up. So we can just throw that in there. And that's it. In not too much amount of code, we were able to kind of build this up. And I'm sure we can make it shorter, but I also wanted to make this readable for kind of illustrating how some of this stuff is done. So let's take a look at the UI and actually upload a video and see what we have so far. We're going to DD the response. DD is short for die and dump. It's something built into Laravel. So we're going to say DD and we're going to say response JSON, and that's going to give us the body of the response as JSON back. It's a shortcut. So let's see what we have. If we open up the UI, I've selected a file. I'm going to click Summarize. Now this takes a second because there's a bunch of things happening in the background, like we're taking the screenshots, saving them, base 64 encoding them, and then sending them to the API. So as we wait for that, that's kind of what's happening. Now we've got a successful response back from OpenAI. Now let's take a look at what they give us. Choices is going to be the thing that the actual response has. So this is the actual response of the summary that we asked for. So this says the video depicts a student taking an exam in a classroom setting. The student has a variety of study materials, including a calculator, highlighters, pens, notebooks, etc. During the exam, the student is observed looking at a piece of paper hidden beneath their thigh, indicating they might be using a cheat sheet to complete their test. That's just absolutely mind-blowing that we can send a series of images to a service and they respond back with this. This just blows my mind that this is even possible. Now down here, this tells us how many tokens that we used in order to do this. So our prompt. So this also includes our images. This was 11,000 tokens. And then the response back was 71. So a grand total of 11,182 tokens. Now that might sound like a lot, but that's maybe anywhere from like 5 to 12 cents, I think. So it's really not that much in the grand scheme of things. Let's use this choices key along with this array to get this content and then feed it back into the UI so that we're not looking at this kind of modal here. So here we need to return inertia render. Inertia is a kind of glue in between Laravel and your favorite frameworks such as React or Vue. So we can just say inertia render, and we're going to give it video summarized. And we're going to pass in the summary as data. And this video summary is response JSON choices. We need to grab that key. We're going to grab the first choice, message, and then content. And just in case, for whatever reason that doesn't exist, we're going to give it the double question marks and just give it a blank string so things don't error out. Let's go back to the UI and see if this works. Again, I've got my file. I'm going to click summarize and it's going to take some time. Awesome. So now it kind of appeared on this UI that we've built. And it takes that text and puts it into this nice little box here so that, you know, if we were building an app or doing whatever, this is kind of a simple example that I wanted to illustrate how you might take the output given back to you from AI and put it in here. I would say pause this if you want to read it, but this is kind of where we're at. The last little kind of bonus tip that I wanted to give you was if you actually wanted to save money, you can downsize the images and then send in the images there. If you look at the docs for OpenAI's Vision API, they specifically talk about having different parameters controlling the detail and the resolution on how things work. The way this works is that in low or low res mode, it should take in a 512 by 512 pixel version of the image. And this is only going to consume 85 tokens. If you enable the high resolution mode, what's going to happen is it's going to create detailed crops of your image. So if it's bigger than 512, it's going to create multiple 512 by 512 pixel files, and then each one of those is going to consume 170 tokens per image. So that's why when we initially did ours, it was something like 11,000 tokens because we were sending video that was a 1920 by 1080 and we were just taking those images and sending them up. So let's do a resize on the video and then take those images. So we're going to resize the video file and we're going to do that up above before we get the duration or before we do the saving of the frames. So that way when we're saving the frames, it's just using that new video that we saved. So we're going to take this FFmpeg and we're going to move it up above. We are going to reestablish the video variable. And so we need to do FFmpeg open. And we're going to say uploaded file path. And so now we can say video filters. This is how we get access to resizing and other things. So we can say resize. This requires a dimension class. So we're going to do new dimension and we're going to say 512 by 512. And so now that we're able to resize it, we need to save the video. So when saving, we have to specify a format. We're going to use x264. And then the actual output of this file, let's create a new variable for this. So we're going to call this like processed video path. And we're going to say this is going to be the base path and video. And then we're going to say, we're just going to tack on like something to the beginning of the file. So we're just going to say like new hyphen and then use new file. So it should be new hyphen uploaded video. And so let's save this into the processed video path. We want everything under this to then now use this. Otherwise, it's going to use the original video. Processed video path. And that should be it. So let's go ahead and try on the front end and see if we get a quicker response time. Now this might go back and forth in terms of time because now we actually are manipulating the video. We're resizing the video. So it might take a little longer to do that, but OpenAI's response back to us should be quicker. I've got my video selected, so let's click Summarize. Now we get our summary back. It looks like it's still working. The quality of the images will affect the summary that is generated from the AI. So if you give it a smaller image, it's not going to see all the little details that you might see in a larger image. So that's important because when you're building something for your app, you'll have to play around with the dimensions that you're sending them and how much you're willing to spend, etc. for your particular use case. Let's dump the output from AI so we can see that this is actually using less tokens. I'm going to use the response JSON again along with the DD. Let's try another file. I've selected the file. Let's click Summarize. Let's check the usage. So we can see this drastically reduced the amount of tokens that we used. Previously, we used 11,000 tokens. This is only 2,600. That makes quite a bit difference if you're building perhaps a large scale app where you may need to consider how much money is being spent. Now that you've learned how to use the Vision API, let me know in the comments how you might use this API in the future. I'd love to hear about all the creative ways that people are using AI. There's definitely more to come in this AI series. If there's something specific you'd like to see, let me know. If you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe as it helps my channel